everyone. Happy Monday. Today we're going to start looking at our next story. It is called The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. And we're going to do some intro activities to get you guys in the right frame or mind space for the story. So here are our objectives today. We're going to identify and discuss the cultural and historical context of the story. In other words, what was American culture like and what was the time period like as far as history when the story was written. We'll predict the themes of the story based on some pre-reading activities, and we'll engage in critical thinking about these topics: tradition, conformity, and societal norms. And we'll demonstrate some active reading strategies to prepare for the full reading of the story. So, you have one assignment so far. That is the lottery pre-reading assignment. Do you see it? Yes. Write your response to the following. Okay, this is individual. What are some traditions in your family, school, or culture that you follow without questioning? And why do you think these traditions exist? But actually, before we do that real quick, let's make sure we understand what a tradition is. What is a tradition? Some sense of what?
Rules.
Rules, or yes, traditions can be rules. What else can traditions be?
Something people do for a long time.
Excellent. Something that people do for a long time. An activity, a holiday, a celebration, anything, basically. So I want you to think about real quick, what are some traditions in your family here at BCC or in Thai culture that you follow without questions? And why do you think these traditions exist? So write that right now. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then I want to hear some of them. So who wants to share their answer? What are some traditions in your family, school, or culture that you follow without questioning? And why do they exist? Yefu.
So, Chinese New Year is a significant tradition that I will follow without any concerns. Children can receive some red and love from the traditions. The major reason why Chinese New Year still exists is that it connects the relationship between people's family members and their relatives, which was extremely important for Chinese people who wanted to educate them.
Excellent. Very nice job. Very good. Chinese New Year. Didn't think of that one. Anyone else want to share what they wrote? Maybe a different tradition? A variety? You need more time? Maybe I'm rushing. Okay. A couple more minutes.
Yeah, if you need.
All right. You want to share yours?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There are many traditions we follow. And one of them is avoiding the number 13. And in this tradition, it exists because the 13 is rumored to be a bad number. And also, if we put the number 13 and rotate clockwise in a 90-degree angle, we get the most high.
Oh, interesting. In America, it's also it's considered bad luck. So for example, in tall buildings in America, did you know there's no 13th floor?
Yeah.
Of course, that doesn't make logical sense, right? Of course there's a 13th floor, but the numbering goes from 12 to 14. They just don't have a 13th floor, yes?
My condo just kept the 13 as 12 and 12A, then 14.
Oh, so here too. So 12 and then 12A.
Yes.
Interesting. I wonder why they just... Oh, okay, I see. Because the 14th floor is actually the 14th floor. Yeah, interesting. Wow. So you don't live on floor 12A, do you?
No.
Okay. If you lived on 12A, would you feel worried or afraid?
Maybe not, because it's not very strong.
Right. Okay, so we've got Chinese New Year and we've got avoiding the number 13. Any others? There's one really obvious one. Pat?
One of the notable traditions I follow in my family has to be called Rotnam Dampua. It's a sacred tradition dated back to ancient Thailand. The tradition exists basically for appreciating and show respect to your parents and grandparents. It was a big culture in Thailand, and this tradition is usually participated during the Songkran festival.
Ah, right. So that's kind of what the original purpose of Songkran was, right? Before, and wasn't part of that tradition where you pour water on your relatives, and that of course morphed into what it is today, a total, tourist, well not tourist, but a massive countrywide water fight. Okay. Right. Do you think that people lament the fact that it's turned into what it is today, that it's become so commercialized? Do you think that the original purpose of the tradition has been lost, or do enough people still follow it so that it's still alive?
No, because in some part of Thailand, maybe the people go back to their hometown and they still do that.
Mhm.
Like do things all the water and
Right.
exit.
It's not like you can't do both if you don't want to. So, yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to share what they wrote? All right. Narapad.
In my family, there is some traditional like don't walk in front of a dog when they're sleeping, but walk over building. Don't throw things at the dog. These are some traditional.
Don't walk in front of a dog?
Yes.
All right. Keep going.
Some reason like don't put together, I get it. But like don't walk at all. What is that? I don't even know.
You don't know the reason behind
I
it?
don't know the reason
Really? I've never heard of that before.
why I walk in front of a dog.
Well, sometimes you might not be able to avoid it, right? Is that considered bad luck, or is it rude to the dog, or does anyone else know? To the dog. That's really. Is anyone else aware of that tradition? Oh. I've never heard of that one before. Wow.
Maybe only for me.
Maybe. Did you ever ask your family about it? Did you ever ask them why do we do this? Narapa? Did you ever ask them where that comes from, or where they got it from, or
They
why?
just call me New Gen.
Okay. All right. Okay, one more. Anyone else want to share theirs? All right, Rachanan.
School, we have to sing the national anthem in the morning as the flag rises, and I think it's the bigger step to the country that we are part of.
Okay, good. National anthem, yes. All right, one more. Anybody else? All right, very good. Nice job, guys. Okay, so two main things this story is about, and it are traditions and small town life. So it's important that we get an idea of what small town life is like, since we're all city people, right? What are some characteristics of small town life?
Boring.
Yes, one could say it's boring, but more specifically, what?
More peaceful.
More peaceful. What else about the way people relate to each other and friendships?
More closely.
What?
Closely related.
And why is that possible in a small town? Why do people know each other better in a small town?
Less
Yeah, there's less people, right? What else?
They have to work together.
Yes, and speaking of work, what primary type of work do people do in small towns? I'm generalizing here, but generally speaking, what kind of work do people do? Agricultural, yeah. They work on farms. Not always. I mean, some commute to cities, but many work on farms. So, can you think of some negative aspects of living in a small town where there's not a lot of people and everyone knows everyone? Okay, sorry, let's back up. let's first talk about what's the positive aspect of living in a small town where everyone knows everyone. What's the advantage of that?
You're comfortable.
Right? Because everyone knows everyone. You can talk to anyone maybe about problems that you're having. You can feel comfortable talking to anyone. But is there a disadvantage to that? Yes, a lot less privacy. What were you going to say?
Technology isn't that advanced.
Right, good one. I didn't think of that. Yes, technology isn't as advanced in a small town. And yes, you do lose privacy. Little bit more specific about loss of privacy. What is the result of that? If you don't have as much privacy, what do you have to be careful about? What can people find out about if you're not careful? What?
Personal information.
Yeah, personal information, personal problems. Like if if you are married or if someone who's married cheats on their partner and they're not careful about it, everyone in the whole town can find out about it. That's just one example, right? So you really have to, be aware of the fact that everyone's gonna know what you're doing. So what I have here is, and I posted this under the lottery in the file section of Teams. Everyone knows one another. Everyone considers each other to be family, so that's certainly an advantage. Everyone helps one another. Most people work in agriculture, as we mentioned. Community celebrations are very important. We missed that part. So traditions are very, very important and popular in small towns. Here's another thing. People tend to live in large houses with plenty of land. Why is that? Why do people live in large houses in small towns?
Less people, less density.
Right, less population density means more
Space.
more space. Yeah, exactly. Many families have also lived in the same house for generations. What does that mean for generations? You should be able to tell from the context. Generations of families. What does that mean?
Like grandparents to parents to children.
Right, grandparents to parents to children, different versions of families over the years, right? Now here's a generalization. It's not 100% true, but it is true. People tend to be uneducated in small towns. Why is that? Again, it is a generalization, but it is at least partially true. Why do people tend to be more uneducated in small towns than in cities?
There wouldn't be any good schools.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a lot of good schools because the emphasis is more on agriculture. And generally speaking, if you make your living through agriculture, it doesn't require the same level of education as if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer. Okay? So yeah, people tend to be uneducated. Now, I believe there are, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there are degrees that you can get in agriculture. I believe there are. But in general, people who work in agriculture, well, many people who work in agriculture are not educated. All right, any questions or comments on a small town life? Has anyone ever lived in a small town? Or has anyone ever spent time in a small town? You have? Where?
Relative house.
In Thailand or somewhere else? Here in Thailand? Where? Huh? Oh, Trump. Okay. So how do you prefer it there to Bangkok or?
Quite boring.
Boring. Okay. And you spent 6 months there. Okay. Trong is in the south, right? Okay. Let's move on. So, all right. We already talked about the disadvantages. So gossip spreads very quickly. What is gossip? Yeah, rumors. right? Oh, did you hear about this person? They did this person said that, this person did this to that person, blah, blah, blah. Just rumors, hearsay. Everyone knows everyone else's business. There's also fewer job opportunities because, as someone mentioned, the technology is not as good, and people are, it's really centered on agriculture. So if anyone is interested in any other jobs besides agriculture, it's hard to find those jobs. And technology is not as advanced as in cities. Okay, let's talk about the author. So the author of the story is Shirley Jackson. She was an American author known for her suspenseful and psychological writing. So I really like this story because it explores the darker aspects of human nature. What does that mean, the darker aspects of human nature? Okay, what is human nature? How we behave, how we act, what we think, right? So what would the darker aspects of human nature refer to? What do you think? Perhaps things about people that are not very good, poor behavior, people who are not nice people who hurt each other, right? Her stories were often set in ordinary environments to reveal unsettling truths about society, conformity, and the capacity for cruelty. What does conformity mean? If you're a conformist, what does that mean? You do what people say to do without thinking about it. Okay? Her stories explore the themes of alienation. When you feel alienated, what does that mean? Yeah, you feel like you don't belong. Alienation, fear, and the fragility of civility. I've defined this one for you. How easily polite, civilized, and respectful behavior can break down when people are under pressure, afraid, or influenced by group mentality or authority. Wow, that's a lot to unpack. That'll become clear when we talk about the historical context. So this was written, I think, 3 years after World War II. Yeah, the story was published just 3 years after World War II ended. And so what was going on during World War II that was such a horrific thing? The Holocaust, yes, where Hitler and the Nazis killed 6 million Jews and others who they deemed undesirables because they didn't conform to the German ideal of a perfect, society, right? So Americans at this time were reflecting on how ordinary people in Nazi Germany had participated in these horrific acts, meaning the Holocaust. And this, of course, raised questions about the dangers of conformity, doing what you were told, groupthink, and obedience. What do you think groupthink means? It's kind of in the word. If you're thinking as a group, and instead of thinking as an individual, what does that mean? You're basically conforming to what the group is doing, and you're not thinking for yourself. So, is anyone familiar with the Nuremberg trials, which happened right after the Holocaust? Anyone know what happened at the Nuremberg trials? What were they? So former Nazis, after the war, were put on trial for their crimes of mass murder. And one of the, Adolf Eichmann was, I believe, Hitler's right-hand man. He was the one who masterminded the Holocaust, right? He was the logistics person for the Holocaust. He figured out how to, transport all the Jews from wherever they were in Europe to the concentration camps where they were killed. And he was asked by the lawyers and judges at this trial, why did you do it? Why did you participate in mass murder? And do you know what he said? Who knows what he said? He said, because I was told to. I did what I was told to. Hitler told me to do it. That's it. So that's conformity, right? The dangers of conformity, obedience, just doing what you're told because someone else tells you to do it. The U.S. at the time was also dealing with Cold War tensions, and the fear of communism was beginning to take hold. What was going on during the Cold War? What was the Cold War? Nobody knows?
Communists and Democrats.
And democracy, yeah. So it was between which two countries? America and the Soviet Union. Both were in a race to see who could produce more what? Nuclear weapons. So that was the Cold War. So it wasn't a hot war, meaning a real war with guns and bombs. It was a Cold War, an arms race. So there was a lot of fear about nuclear war during this time. So during this time there was a lot of fear and a lot of questioning about, how could the Holocaust have happened? How could people have participated in these horrific acts of mass murder? How could human beings do this to each other simply because one person had a different religion or was brought up in identified as a different religion or brought up in a different religion than you were? Now, rural traditionalism, many small towns in America clung to outdated customs and rigid social structures. So small towns tend to be more what? Conservative or liberal than cities?
Conservative.
They tend to be more conservative because the people tend to be less educated. And when you're less educated, generally speaking, you do what you're told. You don't question things. Rigid social structures. What's an example of a social structure? We talked about it with the Welt, although we use different terminology. Think of men and women. Well, what's an example of a rigid social structure that didn't change for a long time regarding men and women? Right. Men were the leaders, women were the followers, the men were the authority figures in the family. The men went out and worked and got, earned money, while the women stayed home and took care of the kids and cleaned the house. That's an example of a rigid social structure because it never changed from that. So the setting of this story is a conservative small town, and it shows how violence can hide behind a facade. A facade is an illusion, something that seems real but isn't, of normalcy and tradition. So the story explores a tradition, a violent tradition, and I won't say more about it now. So Jackson critiques the way societies normalize violence and rationalize cruelty when it's culturally sanctioned. When you rationalize something, I think we used that word before when we were talking about the Welt, you justify it being true when you know it's really not. Okay? Okay, so let's just talk about this and then we'll take our break. So when the New Yorker published the lottery in 1948, so remember I told you guys, many stories back then were published in newspapers initially. So this newspaper called the New Yorker, or it may have been a magazine, I can't remember, it published the lottery in 1948. Readers were outraged. Thousands wrote letters demanding explanations or expressing horror. Jackson, the author, said she received more hate mail for this story than for anything else she wrote. And this intense reaction reflected how close the story hit into our uncomfortable truths about society and human nature. So the story is basically how ordinary people, people who seem like good people, can turn evil and hurt others based on the fact that it is tradition, that it's always been done that way. Let's see here. And also, Shirley Jackson was Jewish, so this could also explain why she wrote the story, and you'll understand more about that as we read it. Okay, I think now's a good time for a break. Come back at 9:33, okay? We're back. Please sit down. Please sit down. Quiet, please. All right, welcome back to part 2. Okay, excellent. So let's now talk about the title, have a little discussion here. So the title is The Lottery. So just based on the title alone, what do you think the story will be about? And what comes to mind when you hear the word lottery? Ratchet? Shh. Gambling. All right. What else? Okay, what is a lottery in general? What's a lottery? More specifically, though. How is it gambling? What do you actually do in a lottery to play the lottery?
Buy a ticket.
You buy a ticket, and what does the ticket have on it? A number. And what's the significance of that number? What's the idea?
Determines how much you get.
Determines how much money, if any, you win. So you buy a ticket, and then at some predetermined date, someone reads the number, the numbers, the winning numbers. And if you are lucky enough to have that number, then you win money. So based on the title of the story, does it seem like it would be a happy story?
No.
Just based on the title? No? Why not? Well, I did tell you some stuff. But if you just base it on the title, why do you think it's not a happy story?
Lottery of high stakes.
Right, okay. It could be something high stakes. But are lotteries always just about money? Yes? What's a tradition in Thailand that's based on a lottery that isn't really a happy tradition? Right. Military conscription, right? Right, yeah. So, lottery is just a general term for you pick a number to determine if you either win something or have to do something. So it all depends on the situation. Okay? All right. So basically, yeah, it's gambling in one form or another. Okay, so let's read the first paragraph. Ooh. Can you guys see this from where you are? Who wants to read this paragraph? It's the first paragraph. Can you guys see it?
Maybe it's
Any volunteers? Not the pot. Oh yes, I put this file in the lottery section. You should all have it. Shh. Okay, not the pot. You want to read it? Just the whole paragraph. The morning of June 27th down to Villagers.
Shh. Which first warm on full summer day. Flowers were blossomed profusely. When the grass was richly green, the people of the village began to gather in the square, between the post office and the bank, around 10 o'clock. In some towns, there are so many people that the lottery took 2 days and had to be started until the second. But in this village, where there were only about 300 people, the whole lottery took just 2 hours, so it could begin at 10 o'clock.
Thank you. So, what is the tone, meaning the mood? What do you think the mood is? Does it seem like a happy mood, like a festive mood, or is there something, an undercurrent of, I don't know, danger? What do you think? Seems pretty happy so far. Which language shows us how happy it is? What language here indicates that it's a happy setting? Clear and sunny. What else? Fresh warmth of a full summer day. What else? Flowers blossoming. Grass is green. People are gathering. So it seems like it's some kind of a happy tradition that's going to be taking place. Is there anything, though, near the end that could suggest that it's something that they have to do or want to get over with quickly? That may sort of indicate that, all right, maybe there is a bit of a negative twist to it.
Just don't want to get home after dinner.
Excellent, Rachanan. Excellent. So it could begin. So the lottery took less than 2 hours. So it could begin at 10 o'clock in the morning and still be through in time to allow the villagers to get home for noon dinner. So that kind of suggests that it's something they want to get over and done with. In my mind, that seems a little strange because a normal lottery, when we think of a lottery where you are playing to win money, it's not something you want to get over with, right? Getting something over with is something that you don't enjoy. So the paragraph starts out in a very, very happy kind of tone, and then near the end, it's like, oh, okay, well, we want to get this over with. All right, so let's see here. Oh, now's not the time for technicalities. So Jackson opens the story with an idyllic and peaceful summer setting, using words like clear and sunny, flowers blossoming, and grass richly green. And this creates, as we said, a calm and peaceful setting. The mood initially appears cheerful and peaceful due to the warm, sunny weather and the vivid descriptions of nature. But there's also, it feels like an undercurrent of unease due to the mention of the lottery and its formality. Formality meaning, they need to get it finished. They need to get it done, by a certain time, or they want to get it done during a certain time. And so the fact that something called a lottery, which is usually associated with rewards, is mentioned so casually and routinely, and that it needs to be completed before lunch, kind of feels a little strange and perhaps a little ominous. What does ominous mean? We didn't talk about ominous? Huh? Yeah, dangerous. Suggesting that danger might be around the corner or in the future. Okay, let's do the small group discussion now. You have this assignment. So there's an even amount, either 3 or 4 of you get together. I'm going to give you 10 minutes for this. All right? Just answer 2 questions. What do you think the purpose of traditions is? And can traditions be dangerous? Why or why not? And then I'll ask a couple of groups to share. So just get in groups of 3 or 4. Everyone needs to write your answers, whatever answers you come up with. Okay? Everyone needs to write it. And I think there's a space on there for your group members. Write your group members' names and just write your answers. Okay? Okay, groups of 2, 3, or 4. It's up to you. All right, go ahead. You have 10 minutes starting now. Okay. Okay, if you did number 3, that's fine. You can share it. Who wants to share their responses? Okay, guys, come on. Which group or individual would like to share their responses? Extra points, hint, hint. Yefu. Listen, please.
The purpose of tradition is to relate one generation to another. For example, a group of people came together to do something that they have done before for a long time, something that their older generations have done before.
Okay, to relate one generation to another. I like that. Really good description. And what about can traditions be dangerous? Why or why not?
I think traditions can be dangerous because it prevents people from themselves. So if that happens, then like anybody else can do that.
Excellent. It prevents people from thinking for themselves. Very good. I like that. Who else wants to share? What do you think the purpose of traditions is? Okay, wait. You can go next. Yes?
Tradition exists to represent cultural identity and strengthening social bonds and maybe attract tourists.
Attract tourists. Very good. Very good. And do you think traditions can be dangerous?
Yes, some traditional can be dangerous. They might hurt people or make others feel uncomfortable.
Good. Good. Excellent. Pat, how about you? You had your hand up.
Oh, yeah. For question number one, traditions of people feel connected to their culture, family, and community. They provide comfort, teach values, and bring people together through shared customs. I think tradition can be dangerous if it involves causing harm or excluding others. Some traditions support inequality, violence, and outdated beliefs that no longer fit in the generation of people.
Excellent job. So I think one of the themes that we're coming up with here in answering this question, can traditions be dangerous, is that they fail to take into account, or some traditions fail to take into account how times change, how society changes over time. And so traditions, after a certain amount of years or decades, can become what? What word am I looking for? Excellent. Outdated. Yes, they can become outdated, right? But see, this is where we have a conflict between the older generation and the younger generation, right? Because the older generation tends to be more conservative, and they'll think, well, we need to continue this tradition because it's always been done that way. And the younger generation tends to be, you guys tend to be a little bit more, open-minded and questioning, because you might think, wow, what does this old tradition have to do with modern day life, right? So there's that conflict between the two generations. And that's how traditions can be dangerous. Anyone else want to share what they wrote? Time for one more? No? Okay, very good discussion, guys. Okay, so for the purpose of my teaching video, everyone, thank you all very much. I'll see you next time.